Hi, sure glad you could join me. I'm Daryl Tank, and I hope I can go ahead and take this opportunity to teach you some new things about drawing and maybe art in general. There's a lot of principles that hold true regardless of the media you're working with, and some of you may be very experienced and you're looking for some new tricks, uh, things that'll make your pictures more effective, and some of you probably have never drawn before at all. I hear all the time that people say they're unable to even draw a straight line or a stick figure. And I'm here to tell you that that doesn't make any difference. I think that if you have an opportunity to learn some of these techniques, it's more like a recipe so that you can start making them the automatic ways that you draw and start gaining some confidence so you can actually come to the place where you can start interpreting a picture and start looking at some other things. Well, I love the mood, I love the lighting, I love the personality of that kid or that person, and I want to capture that. But the fundamentals are things that we'll talk about initially in these demos, and it'll take some practice. It'll take a lot of practice. The more automatic these things become, the more free you'll be to express yourself. And there's a lot of things that are really interesting, I think, about working with a flat piece of paper. If some of you don't know, a flat piece of paper is considered a two-dimensional object. It has a height and a width, but for the most part, we don't have a depth, at least on the surface that we're working on. I realize that paper has some thickness to it, so technically I guess it's a 3D object, but we're working on that flat surface. Whereas with the sculpture, we have the opportunity to have height and width and depth. And that depth may vary depending on what contour that you're doing on a face or a body. Let me show you a couple things here. I went over to a furniture store the other day and I thought this would kind of illustrate the point. This statue sitting here is not looking at you. If I want this to make eye contact with you, I have to be able to turn this just right for it to engage you, the viewer. And if I'm doing that and I have a room full of people, only one person really gets the opportunity to engage George here. And I have to be able to either line this up perfectly so that it is looking at that person. As soon as it isn't, it's not looking at you anymore. And so there's really only one person in that entire room full of people that would be able to feel like they're engaging George. But with that simple piece of flat paper, I have the opportunity to create something that is extremely powerful, and yet it's flat. If I do things right, I can give the illusion that this thing has depth as well. It almost seems three-dimensional. But I can go ahead and turn this thing, as maybe some of you have found when you're looking at a picture on a wall. It seems to follow you all around the room. And as long as you can see the surface or see those kids, even though they're a little distorted, they're still looking at you. It makes no difference. So just from that one thing, think about how powerful. This is just one of the many things that we're going to find out about that I hope I can go ahead and teach you. But we have a tremendous opportunity to impact the viewer and to engage them. And I've watched some people look at the drawings and they probably feel a little silly sometimes, but they almost feel like they can reach out and touch it. And that's an exciting thing. If I do some of the things right, we're going to have something again that seems, it has the illusion of being three-dimensional. Some of the things that we'll talk about later in more depth, but just a little bit of introduction. Learned a lot of things probably by accident along the way, but I used to draw every chance I got. I don't remember not drawing. And people knowing that would bring stacks of paper My folks didn't have a lot of money, and so even if I wanted to paint, I probably wasn't going to get paints to paint with, but there was usually a pencil. And when I found out that I had this at my disposal, I would just draw and draw and draw. And somebody came up to me one day, I think it was my uncle, and he said, "Daryl, take a look at your picture. Do you realize that when you're looking at a person, that there isn't a dark outline representing the edge of their face, such as in a coloring book?" From our earliest days, we get a coloring book handed to us, and we're told to draw within the lines and all kinds of other things. But we get so used to, I think, seeing that dark line in every part of the picture that we're coloring, that after a while, we don't even really see it. It's just an acceptable part of what we're experiencing. And I'm so glad that somebody came up to me and said, "You know, if you didn't put a line on the edge of the face, I think you'd be able to have a lot more contour and depth, because everything that goes around and out of sight," and you'll hear me say this many times, everything that goes around and out of my view, I can no longer see it, that becomes a clean edge. It might be my arm, it might be separating fingers. If I ever want to go ahead and separate anything, I'm going to have a clean edge to separate it from the other dimension. And that opened up a lot of things. Then I started working on getting the most out of my values, the widest range of values that I could possibly come up with, helped me be able to start actually creating that illusion again, that I was lifting that picture up off the page, and it was taking on the look of a 3D object. And so with taking the lines off, working with the contrast between light and dark, and trying to come up with as much contour as I possibly could, I found that it was just exciting, and I kept trying to find new ways of making it have even more impact. There's nothing like having a piece of artwork that somebody can't take their eyes off of. And I think each one of you can experience that yourself if you haven't already. Some of you already know what that's like. And again, I'm not here to say that this is the only technique. It certainly isn't. It's my unique pencil technique. I'm teaching this because people have asked me for years and years how I do it. Sometimes it's been very difficult for them to figure it out. In fact, most people can't. And I think you'll be surprised at how I build this drawing. Actually, it's all done with lines, and that is something very difficult for people to understand. I don't use burnishing tools. I don't use tortillons, the paper stumps, fingers. I try to go ahead and avoid all those things because I love the subtle textures that I'm able to achieve on a picture. And some of them are so subtle that you really don't realize they're there, but our minds pick up on them. And I think it's just one of the things that helps give vibrancy and life to our pictures. So I would like to be able to go ahead and take you on a real good trip, I hope. And I hope you can continue joining me for the demos. And if you'd like to be able to be informed about new ones coming up, or be a part of this, don't forget to go to my website at 5pencilmethod.com, and we'll be able to have these demos available. And I hope you have fun. I'm glad to be able to show you.